He smiled the way he always did, wide, electric, like a boy about to open a treasure chest. But there was something behind that smile this time, something quieter, like he knew. Steve Irwin stood barefoot at the edge of the boat, salt in his curls, sun on his skin, ready to dive into the waters of Bat Reef. The crew had filmed him for years. They knew this man could face crocodiles with nothing but a grin and a rope. But today wasn't about danger. There were no crocs, no snakes, no jaws, just a camera, a reef, and a gentle documentary about ocean predators. A legacy project, something calm, something for Bindi. I just want to show people the beauty down there, he said. Even the scary creatures, they've all got their place. He strapped on his fins, checked his mask, and gave a quick thumbs up to his longtime cameraman, Justin Lyons. Then without a splash, he slipped into the blue. The water was clear, peaceful. The sunlight danced across the coral, painting the ocean floor in gold and turquoise. Fish shimmered past like glittering whispers. It was the kind of place you'd never expect anything bad to happen, but Justin noticed it too. He's quiet today, he murmured to another crew member on the boat. Steve usually couldn't stop talking underwater, pointing, signaling, narrating through his hands like he was hosting a show in his head. But now he floated with purpose. Calm, still. His hands rested at his sides, and for the first time, it felt like Steve wasn't chasing the wild. He was listening to it. They were filming segments for a new show, Ocean's Deadliest. But ironically, they were miles away from anything deadly. The shoot was meant to be safe. Just filler shots. Close-ups of harmless marine life. Justin followed behind him with the camera, staying just above, giving Steve space to explore. As they moved across the reef, Steve signaled something below. A massive short-tailed stingray, wide as a car and longer than a man, was gliding slowly across the ocean floor. It was stunning, dark, graceful, almost ancient in the way it moved. Steve was mesmerized. There, he pointed gently, signaling Justin to frame the shot. The ray settled in the sand, half buried. Its body barely moved, like it was part of the sea itself. Steve hovered above it, careful, respectful. He knew these animals well. Stingrays aren't aggressive, not like crocodiles. They spook easy, but they're peaceful, and this one seemed calm. Justin adjusted the camera angle and started rolling. Steve gestured again. Just a few seconds more, and then he lingered. Too long. There's something in nature that no camera can capture. A tension, a shift, a feeling like the ocean itself is holding its breath. Steve reached a little closer, as if to give one last glance to the lens. Not a stunt, not a trick, just awe. And in that single moment, something changed. The stingray jerked. Without warning, it turned and struck. Its barb lashed upward with shocking speed and precision. A flash, a hit, a flicker of red in the water. Steve didn't scream. He didn't thrash. He floated back. Justin lowered the camera, confused. "Steve?" Steve looked up. His eyes were wide but calm. Then he pressed his hand to his chest. That's when Justin saw the blood. There was no panic, no chaos. Just this chilling quiet, the kind that only happens when something's gone very, very wrong. "Something's not right," Justin whispered, dropping the camera. He swam toward him fast, grabbed Steve by the arm. Steve's lips moved. "It got me." He didn't say it like a man who expected to die. He said it like someone surprised by it, because this wasn't a crocodile. It wasn't a shark. It wasn't even a deadly shoot. It was just a stingray. They brought him up as fast as they could. Back on the boat, the crew tried everything. Pressure, CPR, prayer. But Steve didn't fight it. He just lay there, eyes on the sky, hands still to his chest. He whispered one thing. "Tell Terry I love her." No one spoke, not even the ocean. They wrapped a towel around him. The blood wouldn't stop. It was only later that they learned the barb had pierced his heart. Of all the ways to go, this wasn't the one anyone expected. Not for Steve. Not for the man who had stared down crocodiles, wrestled pythons, kissed venomous snakes, and climbed into nests full of angry birds. Not for the man who said, "Dangerous animals aren't evil, they're just misunderstood." The stingray wasn't found after that. It disappeared into the reef like it had never been there at all. And Steve, he left quietly, like a wave receding from shore. But the sea, it remembers. It always remembers. And somewhere, deep beneath that sunlit reef, Something ancient still stirs. A ripple, a memory, a shadow. Because the wild never takes without reason. And it never forgets. Some deaths roar like thunder. Others whisper so quiet they almost slip by unnoticed. Steve Irwin's last moment began with a whisper. He hovered above the ocean floor, weightless, relaxed, pointing softly toward a stingray as wide as a dining table. The water was calm, crystal clear, with rays of sunlight slicing through it like gentle blades. Steve's hand moved slowly, signaling to Justin behind the camera. "There she is. Look at that beauty," he'd said earlier, voice warm, eyes locked on the creature. The stingray rested still, half buried in silt. Its skin blended perfectly with the seafloor, gray, soft, almost like velvet. This wasn't a scene of danger. It was quiet, almost sacred. Justin floated behind him, keeping the camera steady. They were just wrapping up. A few extra seconds of B-roll footage. Nothing wild, nothing reckless. Steve gently drifted closer, close enough to get that perfect shot from above. He wasn't trying to provoke. He knew better. He respected these animals. They weren't aggressive. They were shy, passive, misunderstood. Then, without any warning, the stingray moved. It shot upward like lightning, its tail whipping with terrifying speed. And in that split second it struck. No warning, no time to react, just a single, violent hit. Justin blinked. At first he didn't understand what happened. The stingray had disappeared into the silt again, gone as fast as it came. Steve hovered in place, arms drifting at his sides. "Steve!" Justin called out underwater. No answer. He swam closer, camera hanging from one hand. Steve turned slowly, one hand pressed tightly against his chest. His eyes were wide, confused, but he wasn't panicking. He wasn't gasping. He looked straight at Justin. His mouth moved behind the regulator. "I'm dying." Justin yanked his mask off and shot toward him. "What happened?" he cried out, pulling Steve by the shoulders. "Steve, talk to me." Steve's hand didn't move from his chest. Blood began to bloom around his wetsuit like ink in water. A dark cloud, slow but growing. Back on the boat, they saw the bubbles break the surface and knew something was wrong. By the time they hauled him up, Steve was pale. He was breathing, but only just. One of the crew shouted, "We need pressure, now!" They stripped the gear off his chest. That's when they saw it. The stingray's barb had pierced directly into his heart. Justin kept pressure on the wound with both hands, shaking. "Come on, mate, stay with me." Steve didn't scream. He didn't cry. He just looked up at the sky. His face was calm, too calm. He whispered, "Tell Terry I love her." Those were his last clear words. The crew didn't stop trying. CPR, pressure, shouting. But in their hearts, they all knew. The ocean had already taken him. Stingrays are not killers. They don't hunt people. This one struck out of fear, not anger. It was likely just defending itself. Maybe Steve's shadow frightened it. Maybe the closeness triggered an instinct. No one will ever know. But what shook everyone was that he had faced hundreds of crocodiles, snakes, sharks, some of the deadliest animals alive. And yet, it was this silent, gentle creature that brought the end. The boat turned back toward the mainland. The crew was quiet. Some cried. Others stared at the water. No one spoke about the footage. It was too painful. Justin sat at the bow, Steve's blood still drying on his arms. "I thought he'd live forever," he whispered. "He was supposed to. And maybe, in some way, he still does. Because that stingray didn't just take a man. It left a scar in the hearts of millions. A silence where there used to be laughter." But Steve wouldn't have blamed it. He believed every creature, no matter how strange or feared, had a right to be here. Even the one that took his life. Maybe that's the part that hurts the most. Not that he died doing what he loved, but that the thing he loved most, the wild, never meant to hurt him. As the sun began to fall behind the sea, casting golden light over the waves, the boat moved slowly. There was no rush now. The water behind them closed like nothing had happened. But something had, and the ocean, silent, endless, held the secret. He had survived saltwater crocodiles, venomous snakes, charging rhinos. But in the end, Steve Irwin was undone by silence, by something gentle, unexpected, and quiet. The water turned red, not all at once, but in soft clouds that billowed out from his chest. His hand pressed down hard, fingers trembling. Justin's camera sank to the sand, forgotten. "Steve!" Justin shouted through his mask, swimming toward him in a rush. Steve's eyes were wide but focused. He didn't panic. He didn't thrash. He just looked surprised. Justin reached him, grabbing under his arms, pulling him toward the surface. Another crew member joined. Together they fought the water. "Hang on, mate. We've got you." The sun hit them as they broke the surface. The boat scrambled into motion, men shouting, "He's hit! Get him in!" They heaved Steve onto the inflatable, his wetsuit slick with blood. Someone grabbed a towel. Someone else radioed for help. The deck turned chaotic. But Steve, he was calm. Too calm. He looked up at the sky, lips barely moving. "Tell Terry, I love her." The words broke them. Justin pressed both hands over the wound. "Stay with me. Just stay awake, all right?" No answer. Just a soft exhale. The stingray hadn't just cut him. It had pierced his heart. The barb had gone in deep, hitting the one place that even Steve's wild spirit couldn't protect. The team worked frantically. Chest compressions, prayers whispered under breath, a chorus of panic, pain, and disbelief. Another muttered, "This can't be how it ends." And yet, under the weight of the sun, the man who had danced with death his whole life now lay silent, his blood soaking into the ocean he loved. The boat raced back, but time didn't. It slowed. Every second stretched like a lifetime. Justin held Steve's hand the whole way. "We're almost there, mate. Almost home." But somewhere along that ride, Steve slipped. No final cry, no gasping, just stillness. And with that stillness came the weight, not just of a man lost, but of what he represented. The wild, the wonder, the childhoods he shaped. He wasn't just a host or a hero. He was the bridge between fear and understanding. He made the world feel smaller, safer, like every animal had a story if we just listened. And now the man who gave voice to the voiceless had gone quiet. The stingray was long gone, vanished into the reef. It didn't attack out of anger. It acted on instinct, in fear. It didn't know it had struck a legend, but it had. Justin stared at the water trailing behind them, red fading into blue. He said softly, "He wouldn't want us to hate the animal." No one answered. They just nodded, tears mixing with salt and silence. Steve always believed nature had its own laws. That respect went both ways. That love for animals meant loving them even when they hurt you. And in that moment, those beliefs were tested more than ever. When they reached shore, paramedics were waiting, but hope had already left with the tide. The official time of death was recorded. A report was filed. A press statement drafted. But to the ones on that boat, time had stopped much earlier. And as they stepped onto land, someone whispered, "He died where he belonged. Not in a hospital. Not behind a desk. But out in the wild doing what he loved, trusting an animal. Even when it cost him everything." Some deaths make headlines. But Steve Irwin's death made the world stop. When the news broke, people didn't believe it at first. It felt wrong. Impossible. The crocodile hunter, gone, killed by a stingray? Australia fell silent. And then it cried. All across the globe, people remembered him. His wild laugh, his khaki shirt, the way he said crikey, like a kid discovering magic. He made the scary things feel beautiful. He made the ugly things lovable. But now, the man who taught us to love the wild had been taken by it. The stingray was never found. It disappeared into the blue, like a ghost. No one hunted it. No one named it. Because Steve wouldn't have wanted revenge. He would have said, "It was just doing what animals do." Still, the world wanted answers. Why that day? Why that animal? But the ocean doesn't say sorry. It doesn't explain. It just keeps moving. The footage from that day exists. Justin Lyons confirmed it. The final dive. The final seconds. But the tape was sealed, locked away. "It's too painful to watch," Justin admitted in a later interview. "It doesn't honor him. It just hurts." Even Terry never asked to see it. She didn't need to. She already knew. She stayed quiet in the days that followed. A few words to the press, then silent. But Bindi, just a young girl back then, stood up. At her father's memorial, she said, "My daddy was my hero. He still is." And with that, she picked up where he left off. Steve's zoo carried on. His shows still played. New books came. New footage aired. But none of it filled the hole. Because Steve wasn't just a man on screen. He was family to people who never met him. He taught us that snakes aren't evil, that sharks aren't monsters, that even the fiercest animals feel fear. And maybe that's what makes his ending so haunting. And in that moment, the ocean took something it could never give back. He did that, and he paid the price with peace, not violence. With wonder, not horror, not torn apart, not screaming, just gone. Some believe Steve always knew he wouldn't grow old. He joked once, "If I die doing what I love, I'll be smiling." And maybe he was. The ocean doesn't mourn, but people do, and they still do. Flowers pile at his statue every year. Letters are left at the zoo gates. Fans whisper, "Crikey," through tears. But his family turned grief into purpose. Terry expanded the conservation work. Bindi launched projects of her own. Even little Robert picked up the camera, walking in his father's footsteps. They didn't just carry his legacy, they became it. And maybe that's what the animals gave him in return. A death without pain, a memory without fear, and a family that would never let the world forget who Steve Irwin really was. Not just a showman, not just a zookeeper, but a man who loved the wild so deeply it became part of him. And when it took him back, it did so quietly, gently, because sometimes the loudest legends leave the softest echoes. He lived for the wild, died with its trust, and left behind a silence louder than any roar.